If I asked 10 incredibly successful, high-performing individuals, think founders, CEOs, high-level executives, the same question, and that question, what is most important in your life? I bet every single one of them would say some variation of the word family. My wife's most important. My marriage comes first. My kids are most important. And 9 of those 10 individuals would be lying. And I wonder if you can relate. I can tell you with the utmost certainty, there's a time in my life where I absolutely could. In fact, for years while I was married, I told my wife that my marriage, was my top priority. And truthfully, I think I believed it. If you had asked me what matters most, I wouldn't have hesitated to say my marriage. My marriage, my wife, they come first. But if someone had followed me around with a camera for 30 days without ever even hearing what I said, they probably would have come away with a very different conclusion. They would have seen me working from home all day, alone, while she worked, and then stopping for all of maybe 30, 60 minutes to eat dinner with her once she got home, and then going back to work for another hour or two before going to bed. They would have seen me up at 5, maybe even 4 a.m. while on vacation just to answer emails, and then feeling utterly exhausted the remainder of the day when I'm supposed to be vacationing and traveling with my wife. They would have seen me obsessively talking about myself, my business, the Instagram algorithm, this problem, this client, when I was supposed to be spending quality time connecting with my wife. My words told one story. My actions, well, they told another. And that gap between what I said mattered most and what my behavior consistently demonstrated, what my behavior consistently prioritized, that gap became one of the biggest sources of conflict, disconnection, and ultimately the catalyst for the end of my marriage. And looking back, I don't think I was intentionally lying to my wife about what mattered most, what came first. I think I was lying to myself. And I see this same pattern in so many of the ambitious, high-level, high-performing individuals that I work with who are constantly chasing more success, more results, more money. In their own unique way, they tell themselves and others around them that their marriage comes first, their kids come first, their family is most important. But their calendar tells a different story. Their attention tells a different story. And their spouse experiences a different story. So today, I want to ask you a question that may be uncomfortable, but has the power to change your life. If someone silently followed you around for the next 30 days, never listening to a single word that you said, what would they conclude actually matters most to you? Welcome back to another episode of the Unstuck High Performer podcast. I'm your host, Paul Salter. I'm a mindset and performance coach, as well as a high performance hypnotherapist. And the crux of what I do is help you get out of your own way, help you begin to not only become aware of, but unlearn the destructive ways of being, believing, thinking, and feeling that are holding you back from enjoying every aspect of the successful life you've worked so hard to achieve. And you could probably already tell there's a lot of personal connection to what we're going to talk about today, the theme. And I'm going to initially use marriage as a lens to really facilitate a discussion around intentionality, honesty, and incongruency. And then towards the end of our conversation, I'm going to widen that lens to apply what it is we discussed today outside marriage as well. And the three key points that I really want to challenge you to listen to truly hear and ready yourself to take action on are the following. Your actions reveal your actual priorities, not your intentions. Incongruency quietly and dramatically erodes self-trust. Honesty creates freedom, and denial creates suffering. So those are the three key concepts we'll continue to dig into today. And again, I'm going to begin really examining each of those through the lens of marriage because of how relatable it is. A large percentage of the individuals I work with, a very large percentage, admit to some degree of intense strain, challenge, or disconnect in their marriages. And the reason this is so potent and needs to be addressed in these coaching relationships is because there is such a heaviness and intensity of energy they are trying to repress in terms of feeling resentment, feeling guilt, shame, anger, sadness, disappointment, disconnection, isolation, loneliness. And these individuals have become incredibly talented at using their work to avoid, numb, cope, and escape those feelings. But those feelings, those emotions, they inevitably bubble up. They need to be expressed. They need to be addressed. So that's why we're going to use marriage as the foundation and the lens of our conversation today. And look, let's be clear. Your wife isn't usually frustrated because of your love for your business, your work, what it is you do. She's frustrated because your words and your actions, they tell two different stories. And eventually, you need to really hear me when I say this. People believe your calendar before they believe your promises. I remember many years ago, I guess we could say, was introduced to this concept listening to an Ed Milet podcast or maybe one of his books on Audible. But basically, the quote that I really walked away with in listening to him was, "Show me your calendar and I'll show you what's most important." Well, there was no date nights, quality time, family night, or family time, or any variation of that at all on my calendar at the time of first hearing that. It was work, 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 gym, work, 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 and maybe another workout. That was it. Yeah, that was a phase of my life when I was working 60, 70 plus hours per week and still trying to convince myself and anybody around me that my marriage was most important. I didn't realize at the time, and maybe you don't right now, that my priorities weren't being reflected in what I was doing. And although I had the best intention, there was a major incongruency. There's an incongruency between what you say matters and what your actions actually say matter. Your priorities aren't what you say. They're what repeatedly receive your attention. You can say all day long, your kids come first, your marriage come first, even your health matters. But if your inbox always wins, your work always interrupts family dinner, your clients get the best, most energized version of you, and your spouse, your children always get your leftovers, well, then your actions have already answered the question. Your calendar reveals your values, and your behavior exposes your priorities. And where I think many individuals misunderstand this is in terms of who you are deceiving through this incongruency. Like, look, the greatest deception isn't towards your spouse, it's toward yourself. And what I mean by that is, I have an imagination that you may genuinely believe your family comes first. I also have an imagination that it's highly likely you inherited that answer of family comes first from your parents, your upbringing, while living a completely different one in terms of your reality actually saying work comes first. And you're not intentionally trying to deceive anyone. I understand that. Like I told you, when I was struggling mightily with this, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought my marriage did come first. I didn't realize the incongruency between my words and my actions. Do you? If your upbringing constantly echoed family comes first, maybe you could even hear a variation of that from your mom or from your dad. What ends up happening all of these years later is you're constantly trying to protect the only identity you've ever known. Because admitting my business actually comes first, you feel selfish. You feel shameful. You feel like a failure. So instead, you keep repeating a story that no longer matches your reality. And that internal contradiction creates shame, guilt, resentment, and conflict. And I can still to this day quite clearly remember, I believe I was engaged to my ex-wife at the time, and we were having some form of a disagreement, and she called me selfish. And I can still remember the visceral feeling of heat and tension that washed over me throughout my chest and down into the stomach, where a strong, really tangible pit-like feeling formed. I felt attacked. How dare you call me selfish? Do you see how hard I'm working? All I'm doing, trying to make more money, to create opportunities where we can do X, we can do Y, travel, have this freedom, that freedom. And it really ate at me. Because part of me knew she was right. But a larger part of me couldn't identify with being selfish because it was preached to me over and over growing up that family comes first. It was role modeled for me that family comes first. And that was a wake-up call for me. And fortunately or unfortunately, one, I was too emotionally immature to actually wake up for. It would be, years later before I really understood the significance of that moment through, navigating the reflection, the grief, processing my divorce, and still trying to figure out who the fuck I was, what was important to me, what was and who was authentically me. And I share that story for you because I have an imagination. You have some already loaded in the chamber variation of, but I'm doing this for my family. Do you see how hard I work to pay our bills so we can take 5 vacations a year, live in this beautiful house, this wonderful neighborhood, so you can stay at home, raise the kids, we can send our kids to the best school, our kids don't graduate college with any debt. Do you see how hard I work? I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for my family. I know. I thought I was too. What I've experienced and observed over the years, however, is that most high-performing individuals, leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, people just like yourself, they aren't primarily working because they love money. They're working because they love their family. But here's the painful irony. the very people that you're working so hard to provide for often feel like they're competing against the thing you're providing. And just let that sink in for a moment. And I want to take a moment now and widen the lens beyond marriage, beyond romantic relationships, because this conversation isn't only about marriage. Marriage may be where the incongruency becomes most visible. It may also be where the tension is strongest, loudest. It may also be where someone finally looks at you vulnerably, courageously, and says, "You keep telling me I matter, but I don't feel like I do." This gap, however, between what you say matters and what your actions prioritize, it shows up everywhere. For example, let's address your health. You say your health matters, but you cancel your workout with your personal trainer or skip the early morning Peloton session the moment that work gets a bit busier. And as a result, you survive on caffeine, skipping meals, sleeping 5 hours a night, and you continue to tell yourself the false truth that you'll take better care of yourself after the next launch, the next hire, the next deal, or the next quarter. Maybe you find yourself consistently saying your kids matter most. Yet, they receive the version of you that is distracted, depleted, impatient, and although physically there, still mentally at work. Sure, you might attend the game, but you're answering emails, you're taking an occasional call. You might sit beside your kids after a long workday on the couch, but your eyes continue to drift towards your phone or replaying how today's meeting went. And maybe they can always talk to you. You tell them, "Hey, honey, I'm always here for you. I'm always available to talk." But your body language just says, "Hey, make this quick." Maybe you've convinced yourself that your peace, that internal sense of peace matters. Yet you continue to repeatedly choose urgency. You say you want a slower, more intentional life, but you continue feeling every empty moment or empty space on your calendar with work, stimulation, noise, obligation. You say your friendships matter, but months pass without calling the people you once said you couldn't imagine life without. Who do you need to call today? Little important sidebar there. Here's what I want you to understand in sharing those examples. Every area of your life is listening to what you repeatedly do. Your body is listening. Your children are listening. Your friends are listening. Your team is listening. And eventually, you're listening too. Because every time you say one thing and repeatedly do another, you weaken trust in yourself. You promise you're going to slow down, but you don't. You tell yourself this is the last weekend you will work, but it isn't. You say you're going to set a boundary with your phone, with work, with clients, your team, but you abandon it the moment someone else is disappointed. Over time, the cost is not only that other people stop trusting your words, it's that you stop trusting them too. You've become someone who makes promises to yourself that you no longer expect to keep. And that creates a quiet kind of internal fragmentation. You may look successful on the outside, but internally, you feel divided. One part of you says, "This is what matters." And another part of you keeps behaving as though something completely different matters. And that incongruency, and that internal conflict creates guilt, resentment, shame. It creates the exhausting feeling that you are constantly disappointing someone, including yourself. And this is why, and perhaps this is the crux of what I want you to take away today, this is why honesty about what truly matters has to come before change. Because before you can reorganize your life, you have to tell the truth about the life you are currently living, not the life you intend to live, not the life you describe on a podcast that you present on social media, not the life you promise your family you are building toward, the life your choices are creating right now. Couple questions to reflect on. What currently gets the best version of you, the most energy? What repeatedly receives your fastest yes response? What are you willing to disappoint everyone else in to protect? And what gets sacrificed first when life becomes demanding? Because those questions, they reveal your actual priorities. And the answers, they may be uncomfortable. You may discover that your business does come first right now. You may discover that achievement matters far more than a sense of internal peace. You may discover that being needed feels safer than being present. That doesn't make you a bad person. But refusing to acknowledge it keeps you stuck. You cannot create alignment in your life around a truth you are unwilling to admit. And here's a big mistake so many people make trying to fight this incongruency, trying to combat this internal conflict. And the mistake they make is in their own unique way, trying to prioritize productivity, jumping straight into some variation of optimizing time management. There's a planner they buy. There's a new planning strategy they begin to incorporate. They block off date night on the calendar. They schedule their workouts on their calendar. They create a family rule about phones and dinners. But the external change does not last because they have not confronted the internal truth. These are the truths you need to be aware of. Why do you keep choosing work? Why does work give you, or what does work give you that stillness does not? What feelings are you avoiding when you stop producing, stop working? And what are you afraid would happen if you became less available, less responsive? What part of your identity feels threatened when you prioritize something that cannot be measured, monetized, or praised? Until you answer those questions and many of the other prompts I've posed so far, your calendar is going to continue to return to the same shape because your schedule is not only a reflection of your responsibility, it's a reflection of your beliefs, your fears, your identity, and what you have unconsciously decided deserves to come first. One point I want to make incredibly clear, though, about alignment, about congruency. It doesn't mean every area in your life receives equal time. That's absolutely unrealistic. And the framework I have found helpful, and there's kind of two parts, but I'll jump into the second because the first part is Honesty 101. But the second part is beginning to see phases of life as chapters, as seasons. The season when your business will require more from you. The season when your children will require more from you. The seasons when your health must be a priority. Congruency, alignment. That means you are honest with yourself and those most important in your life about what season you are in. And I'm in the midst of a change in seasons right now, candidly. For a very long time, I have not worked Saturdays. I've only used Sundays to do 30 minutes of weekly prep. So I've basically not worked weekends. I've had a hard stop time during the week with boundaries. I don't really work much on Wednesdays because I get my son and we go to swim lessons in the pool and do all sorts of fun things. I've taken on a new project, the podcast I alluded to that I will be producing in addition to this one, and a couple other exciting opportunities that are going to demand a few additional hours each week. And I want to maintain prioritizing time with my son. And given I have him a limited amount of time, I will protect that ruthlessly. In addition to that, since things still need to get done and move, I need to put in a couple more hours during the week. The only time that's available to me is on the weekend. So that needs to be communicated, with all of those crucial, important relationships in my life, that now there's an understanding for the next 3 to 4 months. Work needs to get done on Saturday and Sundays. And sadly, that also probably means a little less golf. But golf will be there. And it's a season. It's not forever. And before I can even acknowledge the season I'm in, I have to be honest with myself about what matters most. What is a priority? And I think maybe you don't need permission, but in case you do, it's okay to say your business or your work matters most. When you do that, when you are honest with yourself, you now create a foundation in which you can have an honest conversation with your wife, with your husband, with your children. This is probably reserved for your wife, husband, and close family members, however. And through that honest conversation, you have an opportunity to express needs, to express what you need, what he or she needs, to listen, to grow closer, to develop a deeper mutual understanding so you can continue to work together to build the life you both desire to live and to have. So I also encourage you to spend some time reflecting on what matters most. And this could be maybe like an overarching what matters most, and then what matters most for this predetermined, defined season or chapter of life. Don't answer through a socially acceptable lens. Don't answer through a family acceptable lens. You have to be honest. And when you're really clear on what matters most right now, what your actions continue to demonstrate matters most, I want you to then ask this question. Is that a priority or a choice that you're proud of? Maybe you are in a season of building, healing, parenting, rebuilding, or surviving, and your current priorities are intentional. But maybe the answer is no. Maybe your life has slowly drifted into a hierarchy you never consciously chose. Maybe your biggest clients get more protection than your health. Your inbox gets more immediate attention than your spouse, your children. And if that is true, you don't need more shame. I don't want you to feel any more guilt than you likely already do. You need more honesty. Because honesty gives you a place to begin. And once you tell the truth, first and foremost, to yourself, you can make a choice. You can decide what deserves to remain first, what needs to move, what needs to be communicated clearly. You can stop over-promising and create boundaries that reflect your actual values and priorities. As we conclude today's conversation, again, I don't want you leaving this conversation feeling any more shame, any more guilt. I want you to leave with greater honesty. Because the goal isn't to have perfect priorities. The goal is to live in alignment with the priorities that you say you have. So here's the challenge I'm going to leave you with. Set aside 15 minutes. Take an honest look at your calendar, your attention, your energy over the last 30 days. Not your intentions, not your explanations, just the evidence. If someone who loved you looked at your life, what would they conclude actually matters most? And if the answer doesn't match the life you want to live, don't waste energy trying to defend it. Spend that energy changing it. Because every meaningful transformation begins with telling yourself the truth. And if you're listening today thinking, Paul, I know my actions, my values are out of alignment. I just don't know how to change the patterns I've been repeating for years. That's exactly the type of work I do with my clients. And if that's something that you're ready to explore in greater detail, I invite you to use the link in the show notes to apply for one-on-one private coaching. You don't have to keep building a successful life that feels incongruent and disconnected from the people and things that you say matter most. Success should never cost you what matters most. Let's make sure that yours doesn't. Somebody in your life needs to hear this conversation. Somebody in your inner circle is experiencing the exact struggle, challenge, and pain we discussed today. Share this episode with him or her. And leave a rating and review on the show wherever it is you're listening, because it helps far more than you may realize. Thank you for listening. Make today great, and I'll catch you in the next episode.